Monsters from the One Punch Man series versus natural enemies from the Versus manga. These two stories are made by the same author known as One, famous for his unique storytelling and hyped scenarios. I was honestly planning to make a fully dedicated video to talk about the Versus manga that is certainly one of the most criminally underrated stories I've ever read, basically urging everyone to go and experience this masterpiece. But then I decided to do this first since it's something I really wanted to talk about for a long time. A crossover between One's creations. This is also my way of sharing the Versus manga to try to make it more known and recognized by the public. But nonetheless, here is the premise of this video. What if the One Punch Man monsters suddenly appeared in the world of Versus as a new type of natural enemy? You can say that this was because of a butchered portal attempt by Blast that resulted in the merging of their universes. So how would the demons, kaiju machines, and other enemies of Versus perform against the One Punch Man monsters? In this video, we're gonna be discussing how strong the verse is so far and try to determine these creatures' threat level in the One Punch Man verse. But before that, make sure to share this video if you are a Versus fan, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell for more of these types of videos. Thank you. To win against your natural enemy is absolutely impossible. This is a hard fact in the Versus series, in which in every universe there is some kind of calamity, creatures, or disaster that completely dominates mankind. And in chapter 4, we've got to understand that humanity from each universe needs to deal with 30 natural enemies. You've got demons, titans, robots, parasites, aliens, kaiju, nature, lawless humans, advanced humans, curses, games, a tree, and a literal god. Each of these factions either have crazy hacks, overwhelming strength, tremendous technology, otherworldly intelligence, and much more. However, since we're only on chapter 27 on the manga, a lot of these factions are still highly ambiguous. I mean, we've seen snippets from almost every enemy, but there are others who are still kept secretive for future arcs. But regardless of that, what we need for this video is the knowledge of this Versus power scaling. First of all, it's very important to understand that not all factions are monstrously strong or has combatants that rely on brute force. For example, neo-humans are surely dangerous, but it takes multiple of them to take out one single titan, which presumably means that their chief or leader would most unlikely not be on par with somebody like Gimbak or Byakuo, who are kings of their monstrous factions. Surely they'd be equal in threat level, but not in combat. With that in mind, we have 5 entities that can safely be considered above everybody else. All of them have proper scaling and statements that ensures their superiority over the verse. Gimbak was able to one-shot a medallion, overpower a demon lord, and force another to use his released form. Byakuo has been stated to be an extraordinary demon by Jachi himself, adding that the change of the world to him would be of little concern. Medallion's ship convinced Kiva that these aliens are a force that can rival even the Great Demon Lord. Daikokuzan destroyed the same ship just by walking towards it and has been stated by Pan to have the most dangerous scent he smelled so far, and Yaotsu, who by now presumably is the strongest character if not the most solid contender for that claim. Meaning, any type of scaling we have for any character, demon, titan, and heroes, these guys would considerably be above it. You see, in chapter 2, an advanced robot was able to evaporate the ground using one of its beams, and since its firepower is stated to be a thermal ray in its character profile, this resulted in 3 different ends. Solely highballing the character and using the third choice, this robot would be wielding large town plus level of destructive beams. However, I gotta state that this calc is still not approved in the Versus community and we're solely using it for the benefit of the doubt. But nonetheless, since Burst Form Kiva, who was threat level 6, fought with it and eventually defeated it, he should be scaling slightly above 819 kilotons of TNT, and that's obviously when using the high end. This is substantiated by Kiva himself, since he later implies that if he transformed earlier, he'd be able to deal with it with less difficulties. Now, we know that Focused Halo outscales Burst Kiva, we've literally seen that fight, and if you assume that this Halo should still be weaker than 2 Hands Halo of chapter 1, then that would mean that Suppressed Jachi no-souls large town level strikes. However, one could still argue that Focused Halo could be stronger than his previous state, since now he has more courage and conviction. There are also statements that could back this up, like Halo implying they were were helpless against demons and demon lords, and by demons he should mean demon leaders on par with Kiva's level. And speaking of Kiva, he also was surprised of Hallow's powers, saying that he meant to be nothing more than an outlet for his stress. So regardless of what you think, we'll assume that chapter 1 Hallow is stronger, and by this logic, suppressed Jachi can tank 819 kilotons of energy and calls it a pathetic level of strength. And even according to Uki, suppressed Jashi's strength stands on a completely higher realm than other demons, so much so that he thought he's dealing with a demon king. Now, to my understanding, focused Hallow would still have troubles against normal titans, as he's not completely sure Aryu and himself can take them down with no casualties, paired with the fact that Pakya, who should be nothing to titans, was still able to hurt Hallow. Keep that in mind and bring Gori to the equation. Gori is the 6th son of the chief of titans, clearly much stronger than the norm, still got one-shotted by suppressed Jachi, which means if we say that he is a one-shot tier above Hallow and Burst Kiva with his coat on, then this would make him city level. And since base Medallion Uki was able to fight suppressed Jachi and keep up with him in most parts, then they should be relative in strength. However, Uki after transforms to his space plate Shinra state, and to be frankly honest, we do not know the multiplier for the boost he attained at that time. He does say that using the space plate would do much damage to the environment they're trying to investigate, which could literally mean the entire planet. But assigning a proper level based on this ambiguous statement is practically impossible, since it can mean a lot of things. But you can get things to a higher realm of craziness. You see, Spaceplate Uki managed to create a mini black hole that distorts gravity and wraps space and time. This feat was calced and accepted as planetary in scale with multi-continental kinetic energy, which is a crazy level of strength attained in only 19 chapters. Some would try to discredit this by saying that it either isn't a real black hole or we just simply lack the proper information regarding this ability, as the alien seems to be technologically advanced and maybe they can create something that resembles a black hole. These are obviously not my arguments, I'm simply playing the devil's advocate. The point I'm trying to make here is that suppressed Jachi withstood this black hole attack directly, and this would logically place his durability in the multi-continental range. Although I want to state that I consider this a huge highball that needs more supporting feats, as this meta is not going to be the basis of this video, but we'll make sure to include it as another possibility. Now, base Jachi without his code completely obliterated Spaceplate Uki with relative ease, so much so that it made the alien conclude that the demons are an actual threat that needs to be carefully dealt with. This level of power should place him much higher than just city level of AP, as he later also tangles with his strongest titan Gimbak, withstanding 2 of his punches. You see, if we ignore the black hole meta, then you can technically say that most of the verse caps only at mountain level, but the issue we have here is that all of those who performed mountain level feats has done it with relative ease. You've got Daikukuza destroying a Medallion's ship just by walking with absolutely no effort, also stated before to have the ability to crush countries, and Yaotsu created a volcano out of nothing to deal with the parasite, but in chapter 27 he stated that this doesn't even cover the tip of his powers, so giving the verse only mountain level of attack potency feels extremely premature, as these characters should be capable of much more. Now let's try to simplify everything we've said before about attack potency. Characters on the level of demon leaders and focused Hallow, if we assume they can tank the robot's lasers, should be large town level. Characters on the level of suppressed Jachi and base Medallion should be city level. Characters on the level of base Jachi and a holding back Gimbak should be mountain level. And god tiers are obviously significantly above that tier. If we go by the second meta, which is the black hole upscale, then suppressed Jachi and above should range from country to planetary levels of AP. Now let's tackle the speed department, since I think it's a very simple matter. Mages like Zabi and Gyuta can summon lightning that comes from the sky, and these characters from a narrative standpoint are below Sorcerian heroes, which makes them massively hypersonic plus. This actually makes more sense since Kiva, in his released form, deflected cosmic lasers that traveled from space to Earth instantly. Yet this same Kiva, in his more powerful burst form state, was completely blessed by base Medallion Galua. Galua after fought 4 demon leaders in their burst forms while they were amped by other mages. He goes to dominate them easily while he was still heavily holding back. Medallion Uki should operate on a similar frequency in his base form, transforms to his Shinra plate state, and still gets blitzed by base non-released Jachi Jachi, which logically means that these characters should be operating from massively hypersonic plus to lightspeed levels with multiple stacking amps. You can also argue that someone like Aryo should already be within these levels of speed if you think that he can move relatively to the flash of light he emits, which would heavily upscale everybody that is above Fairy Union Aryo. But nonetheless, considering we're only on chapter 27, the power ceiling is already insane. Things will surely change in the future and we'd be making a different kind of video. With all of this being said, how would they do against the One Punch Man monsters? So, as I always say before, we've already made multiple videos talking about the One Punch Man monsters, and since my stance of how strong they are still didn't change, we're not going to give them their own segment to avoid repetition. And with that being said, let's now start with the low tier characters when it comes to the natural enemies. You see, normal soldiers of the demons for example, and first stage robots should range from wolf to tiger level monsters. Most of them gets cleared by firearms, magic, and normal human level characters. Some tiger level monsters like the forest tribe and the subterranean people should be able to compete and even maybe dominate, meaning these guys are not an issue in the One Punch Man verse. Now demon leaders like Kiva, Bikook, Oppo, and Shinso in their burst form scale to or above the released advanced robot who has a large town plus level of DC, which means they can certainly fight against demon level monsters in One Punch Man. So a fight between G4 or G5 against the advanced AI robots would actually be competitive. You can also say that Kiva's burst form would allow him to match demon level monsters like Beast King, Rhino Wrestler, Mosquito Girl, etc, etc. The normal titans however are extremely tricky, since one of them was able to physically slightly overwhelm Halo in chapter 3, but that's a heavily nerfed Halo that couldn't even damage the advanced robot. Although titans also can go berserk, and we've seen that they become much stronger. So if we loosely scale berserker titans to Halo who scales above Kiva, you would be able to argue that they would be demon level monsters. Now before clicking on this video, you've surely seen that the thumbnail has the Deep Sea King and Demon Lord Jachi. Reason is this way is because their designs are pretty similar, greenish creatures with fish-like features. However, can the Deep Sea King hydrated or dehydrated fight against Lord Jachi? The answer is absolutely not. With the low ball scaling of the versus verse, he may be able to hang a little against suppressed Jachi, but once this creature takes out his coat, no demon level monster can really compete against him. He's someone who withstood punches from Gimbak, who by the lack of general showings should at least be mountain level. So base no release Jachi and a holding back Gimbak should be considered dragon level monsters, and via extension so should Spaceplate Uki and burst form Daikanaza. But did they show anything remarkable to suggest they can fight top tier dragon level monsters? I think not. A lot of monsters slash cadres has reliable scaling that places them way higher than what the versus verse has provided so far. Homeless Emperor's firepower, Black Ass's numbers, Vomiter Fury ugly matching Darkshine, Goketsu's country level of AP being scaled above the Meteor, and much more. However, do I think that the versus verse is going to cap at mountain level? Absolutely not. I don't think someone like Gimbak is going to be as strong as someone like Vomiter Fury ugly, but as for now he doesn't have that scaling that puts him above these characters. Give it more chapters and things would drastically change. Statements on a narrative standpoint and the vibe this series is giving suggest way higher strength level in the future. With that being said, if we take similar characters and pin them against each other, Bonus being an alien just like the Medallons would dominate all of them easily. Daikokuzan doesn't have any reliable scaling that suggests he can handle a kaiju like Sage Centipede. Platinum S would be able to blitz every character in versus since they still don't have a feat that places them at that level of speed. However, Yaotsu is a different case. He's literally given the strongest character vibe, and so far he's been showing signs of divinity as he can do whatever he pleases. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if he ends up on the level of Cosmic Fear Garu or someone even above, but for now he sadly only have one creation feat, which means that the high tier characters so far are dragon level monsters and their subordinates fits in the demon level category. Now if we include the black hole meta and say that suppressed Jachi energy is already at the multi-continental ranges, then that means released and burst form would even be able to match someone like Boros, possibly. Genbak, Daikokuzan, and Yaotsu would even be above that, which already makes these creatures above dragons and possibly gods. But as I said, it's a meta that needs more clarifications and better grounds to stand on. Alright, so when talking about the other natural enemies, the parasites and the curses, if goes undetected, would raise in threat level from tiger to even possibly god. It's simply not a matter of fighting, but a matter of surviving. A threat that can cause the extinction of humanity. The natural enemy of nature itself is still an ambiguous enemy. We only know that some Medallans failed to return from one of its forests. Near-humans in masses can be considered threat level demon to dragons, since we still didn't see what they can fully do. The world tree should be threat level god since it's sucking the planet's energy, kinda what Psycho Orochi wanted to accomplish. Lawless humans at best would be demon level threats if they are combined together, although I could be sleeping on them, but it appears that one monster can go annihilate every single one of them. And in the word of One Punch Man, criminals like these are literally everywhere, which leaves us with Extermia, which is a natural enemy we still do not know a single thing about. Thank you so much for watching this video, and do not forget to join the Discord server. I tend to reply faster there, and you can suggest future videos. Also, make sure to check my second channel, which is in the description, the one that I'd be dropping versus videos on. And until next time, please take good care.